Hi, this is Phil Leach. In this session, what I'd like to do is to discuss with you the natural or literal interpretation of the Song of Solomon. We've looked at the typological or allegorical approach, the so-called cultic approach. We've explored the Song of Solomon as a drama. And in this last approach, I'd like us to consider the natural or the literal interpretation. Now, this particular view holds that the Song of Solomon is a series of poems praising the virtue of sexual and married love. This is to say that it is lyrical poetry. Lyrical meaning romantic or emotional inspired poetry, and not dramatic poetry in the sense that there's a drama unfolding. A number of separate poems, and people would break it up a little bit differently, but nonetheless poems that are part of a unity. And so, for example, the characters are the same throughout the 8 chapters, and there's certain refrains that we will see later help us identify a very clear structure. And so it's these refrains and structure that bind them all together. Leland Rykin, in his book Words of Delight, speaks about the Song of Solomon. Rykin, by the way, was or is the professor of English at Wheaton College. He argues, and I think what he says is really helpful here, he argues the key to understand the Song of Solomon is to put it in its literary family. Once we understand the nature of the literature, we then have the right spectacles that we can put on in studying the book to interpret it effectively and in a good way. This book covers the whole range of romantic emotions, as you would have noticed. The raptured joy of being in love, the longing to be with the one that you love, the frustration and pain of separation in these 2 scenes when they're apart in chapter 3, chapter 5, and then romantic passion satisfied, as we see in a number of the chapters. So the right question to ask is not so much what is the plot, but with this kind of lyrical poetry, how does it make me feel? So he would argue, don't agonize over the plot. The poems are a collection that portray a single relationship. If you want to understand what's going on, it's very simple. The king falls in love and marries a farm girl. Now, he argues too that the book does not need to be history. It does not need to be history to be true, in the same way as the parable of the prodigal son or the Good Samaritan are not historical in the sense that these stories refer to actual people, but the message, of course, we know in those parables is very, very powerful. And so in the genre of wisdom, the book does not need to be history. Maybe it was, but it doesn't need to be for it to be effective and powerful in the message that it's giving. The features of lyrical poetry are these, and that it is written to stir up emotions. It's pictorial, creating scenes that we can imagine, and it's filled with passion, and that's certainly true of the song. It's sensuous in style, that is to stir up the senses in a legitimate way, not sensual, which would stir up emotions, passions in an illegitimate way. Hyperbole is used extensively. You remember from the teaching on the figures of speech. Hyperbole is exaggeration, not with the intent to deceive, but to make a point. It's metaphoric, uses metaphors a lot, and very symbolic. And when we explore some of the poetry together, I think you will see how this works. So, this particular genre of love poetry, ancient love poetry, there are various elements that were common, and in a few moments we'll explore some ancient love poetry that has been discovered in archaeology, and you will see these elements, common elements, in these poems too. So you get the joy and excitement of the lovers in each other's presence, 3-4 and 7-6-12. Often things happen to hinder their encounters together, and these really serve as a foil to underscore the joy of the reunion after these obstacles have been overcome. Chapter 1:6 and 5:7. And then there's the motif of seeking to find, chapter 3:1-5. The elaborate descriptions of the physical beauty of the beloved. These particular poems would use birds and animals, the imagery from these, and from plants and flowers, clothing, perfume, jewellery, precious stones. These are features of this kind of poetry, along with the bedchamber. The goal of their desire for one another is the consummation of sexual intercourse, and we see this in the song on a number of occasions. There's vivid descriptions in such poetry as the joy of seeing one another, as in 4:9, or hearing the voice, as in 2:8, the touching in 2:6, and kissing, as we see in 1:2. The sense of smell in chapter 7 verse 8, the fondling in 2:6, and ultimately sexual intercourse, as we see at the end of the honeymoon scene in chapter 4-5 and in 7:12. Another feature that is very common to this particular genre is such family terms as sister and brother, not meaning physical family members, but rather a term of endearment, and other terms like king and queen, or prince and princess. These are normal terms in such a genre. So let me give you some examples of ancient love poetry. This will, I trust, be fun, but also be enlightening, and show you how the Song of Solomon fits very comfortably within this particular framework of poetry, yet, as is so often the case, has been cleaned up and purified and used for God's purposes. In the same way as God used the suzerainty covenant form to give Israel their constitution, but cleaned it up and used it for his own purposes. So in these 8 chapters of the Song of Solomon, it seems the genre is ancient love poetry, but God has taken it and cleaned it up, and what we see is a poem on sexual love that is very vivid and quite strong, but pure and holy, as we would expect as a reflection from God. So, some examples. This is from a 3,000-year-old papyrus, She is one girl, there is no one like her. She is more beautiful than any other. Look, she is like a star goddess arising at the beginning of a happy new year. Brilliantly white, bright-skinned, with beautiful eyes for looking, with sweet lips for speaking. She has not one phrase too many. With a long neck and white breast, her hair of genuine lapis lazuli, her arms more brilliant than gold, her fingers like lotus flowers, her heavy buttocks and girt waist, her thighs offer her beauty. With a brisk step she treads on ground. Her heart captured my heart. She has captured my heart in her embrace. She makes all men turn their necks to look at her. One looks at her passing by, this one, the unique one. So that's an example, and you'll notice the use of flowers and precious stones, the descriptions of the body, etc. in that poem. This one has been entitled Conversations in Courtship. He says, "Darling, you only, there is no duplicate, more lovely than all other womanhood, luminous, perfect, a star coming over the skyline at New Year, a good year, splendid in colours, with allure in the eye's turn. Her lips are enchantment, her neck the right length, and her breasts a marvel. Her hair lapis lazuli in its glitter, her arms more splendid than gold. Her fingers make me see petals, the lotus are like that. Her flanks are modelled as should be, her legs beyond all other beauty. Noble her walking. My heart should be a slave should she enfold me. Every neck turns, that's her fault, to look at her. Fortunes who can utterly embrace her. He would stand first among all young lovers. Every eye keeps following her even after she has stepped out of range. A single goddess, uniquely." She says, "His voice unquietens my heart. It's the voice's fault if I suffer. My mother's neighbours, but I can't go see him. Ought she to enrage me? Mother? Oh, stop talking about that fella. The mere thought of him is revolting. I am made prisoner because I love him, Mother, but he's a mere kid with no brains. So am I. I'm just like him, and he doesn't know I want to put my arms around him. That would make Mama talk." And so you see in that poem how there's the foil of separation and the obstacles to overcome, and again the descriptions of the physical beauty and the voice and all these things that we noted in the song, and also the different people speaking with that dramatic dimension of the different parts that we see in the song as well. Just for fun, this is a poem from the 6th century BC. I thought this was very funny, so I'd like to include it. "I wish I were your mirror so that you always looked at me. I wish I were your garment so that you would always wear me. I wish I were the water that washes your body. I wish I were an ointment, oh woman, that I could anoint you. The band around your breasts, the beads around your neck. I wish I were your sandal, that you would step on me." And so you can see that these examples from ancient poetry are in some ways very similar to the song, but of course in other ways are very different. As we will see, at the heart of the Song of Solomon is the marriage, the wedding. And that love, the love that is described and summarizes the love that surrounds the Song of Solomon, is a covenantal, exclusive love that we read in chapter 8 is as strong as death. And we'll explore that soon.